What's going on? Welcome to Chop It Up, the weekly show every Tuesday here where we chop it up. Um, as always, had to catch my thought for a moment. As always, everything is completely off the top, off the dome, no scripting, anything of that nature. But in the words of that prophet, otherwise known as Earl Simmons, y'all gonna make me lose my mind up in here,
Up in
up in
here.
here. Y'all gonna make
Oh
me
yeah.
act a fool up in here,
Up in here.
up in here. All right, so I'm Kevin, host. Let the guys introduce themselves, and then we'll jump in today's topic.
My bad. I got salt shakers and pepper shakers falling over the place. My bad. It was like, what is that? Tari Watkins, Oklahoma City. Like Kev said, love being here every Tuesday night, chopping it up with the fellas. And I'm kind of interested in what today's topic is going to be. So y'all will find out in a few minutes. Mr. Sire,
What's up, baby?
what you know, man?
Chris out here, Oklahoma City. Shout out to all the grown people eating their burgers medium.
Brother,
Yeah.
do you have like a list?
See, here's the thing, man. You don't know Derek, bro. This stuff come off the dome, bro. He's got stuff stored, and he just plucks it whenever he needs it.
When I tell you
Yeah.
it's so cold, it's so smooth, I'm like, dude, he's got to have a book. He got to have a book just sitting there,
Smooth.
just smooth
Telling
with
you,
it.
man. Smooth it in a jar of peanut butter in the middle of summertime, man. I'm telling you. Smooth. Look at
My name is Darian Lewis, here from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and as always, I am happy to be here. Let's do this.
All right, so I put that disclaimer in there. Again, this is completely off the top, completely off the dome. This is unscripted, but I'm going to make an additional disclaimer for this topic. We are going to be talking about lessons from John Gray. Now, if you came to watch and you came to see and get the tea, this ain't that show. This
ain't it.
This is not the show about getting the tea and finding out the scoop. If you know, you know. If you don't, you don't. Right? But this is really, let's talk about some of the lessons that we as men can take away from the John Gray situation.
That too.
There's some stuff from John Wayne too, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in case you don't know, just to kind of set the context, John Gray has, for the second time in, I believe, as many years, been accused of basically emotional cheating, emotional infidelity. There have been, it looks like, at least two women that have come out and said been inappropriate while he's been in ministry. So the question I have is, what can we take away from that, and how can we, one, make sure we guard ourselves? Because the first person that says, yeah, I would never do it, is almost always the first person that's going to fall for it, right?
Exactly.
So what can we take away from it? That's the goal of this, is what are the lessons that we can learn from this? Don't everybody jump in at once.
Well, I'll start.
Go for it. I don't jump anywhere.
Yeah.
I don't run either. I may walk fast. I don't jump or run anywhere. I'm just letting you know.
No, yeah, this topic is very interesting to me simply because, as you mentioned, this is the second time something like this has come out. The first time it was deny. This time, it's I've got brokenness and therapy. Nothing wrong with this response. I actually watched the whole the official church response before we got on here, and found it to be very, very interesting. So one of the lessons that I would say, number one, accountability.
Bro.
Plain and simple, and not the churchy once every blue moon, judge me by my gift type of accountability.
Yeah.
Very few of us have someone that can actually force us to pop open our checkbook.
Yeah. Yeah.
How are you spending your
Yeah.
money?
Yeah.
Right.
You know, very few of us can actually call up, somebody's spouse and say, okay, give me the real.
Right.
What's really going on?
Right.
That's, and don't get me wrong, that's not just open for whoever, but certain levels of life and certain levels of leadership, man, they just require a different level of accountability and a different level of uh, what's the word? Checks and balances.
Yeah.
You know, and he didn't have it. Plain and simple, he didn't have it. He avoided it. I hope he keeps it because as easy as it is to put it together, it's also very easy to get away from it.
Yes, it is.
So anyway, my first 2 cents.
Derek.
Derek, are you trying to filter or what are you trying to do?
You know, precious time now. I, my hope is that um, I think there's an old school line of thought that draws a very strict and thick line on co-ed friendships, and I think things like this will reaffirm that old school thinking. I think people like Billy Graham was like, I'm not gonna be on the elevator. I'm not no altar calls, no like he was, and I know that is a fail proof approach, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that is necessary. There are some people that I know that they don't want certain food in the house because if it's in the house, they're gonna eat it. Right? You got people that are recovering from alcohol or drugs, and they're like, I can't be around it. Right? I know myself. And I think that there are people that are under the mindset that men and women cannot be friends. In fact, if you looking at like that's my best friend, people like, or like that's my roommate, people like, So while I'm not ignorant to the enemy's devices, I also don't think that men and women need to sit on opposite sides of the church. Um, and so I fall somewhere in between, which is why uh, we don't have the time necessarily to break down all of that. But I just really hope that people um, are mature enough to know where their weaknesses lie,
Mm-hmm.
to admit when they need to be accountable to each other, that they can loop people into relationships where there's no isolated, like this is just us and don't nobody have access to it. Like I think there's some things that you can do that you can put into place that will allow you access to people as well as maintain your integrity. And I don't know what that looks like because I believe it's different for everybody, but I don't believe in the extremes.
Yeah, I'll actually pick on two things. Well, not two things, but with both Darian, and what Derek hit. Um, and I'll reply to what you just said, Derek. I'm not a fan of extremes whatsoever. I don't care if it's food. I don't care if it's politics. I don't care if it's Christian. I there's only a couple extremes that I deal with. Do you believe in Jesus and that he died and he rose? Okay, yes. You're gonna. I mean that some people call that an extreme, but I believe in that extreme. But when it comes to whether you're, I don't know, liberal or conservative, I don't believe in extremes because I'm not going to be far on one side. I'm not going to be far on another side. When it comes to discipline, I'm not a fan of extremes. Spank your child for everything they do, or don't spank them at all, let them run the house. No,
Mhm.
I don't deal with extremes that way. And the same way with this, I don't deal with extremes, and I don't think extremes work because they don't create structural, habits that are going to be fruitful.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't agree. I don't disagree with you at all with that, Derek. Darian, something that you said. Is straight up accountability. I don't disagree with that at all. But we have to remember we can only be held accountable for things that we disclose,
Mhm.
and that we allow people to hold us accountable for.
Mm-hmm.
So if that action isn't taken by us, then nobody's going to be able to hold us accountable. And we've heard that term, being accountable and accountability, for decades, but yet and still we have an issue with it. I think with me, is something that I think about quite often, and it's this: we have to, and I think Derek may have mentioned it. We have to understand what our weaknesses are, because guess what? The devil knows what our weaknesses are. We have to know what our weaknesses are. I mean, it's great to know your strengths. It's great to know what you're great at. It's great to know the things that you do incredibly well. But if we don't understand our weaknesses and we don't understand how to defend ourselves against them, then however strong we are, it's not going to really matter. And I've told guys before, and I use it in my training classes also, with any job that you're on. I said, know what your weaknesses are. We don't expect you to bring your weakness from a 2 to a 10.
Right.
But if you bring that weakness from a 2 to maybe a 6 or a 7, to where you're a little bit stronger than you were before, I said, that's progress. I mean, you think of Rocky. Rocky was a southpaw, and that's the way he fought. His weakness was not being able to fight right-handed. So what did Mickey do? Tied his arm behind his back, and he made him fight as a right-handed fighter. And then when he needed to drop the hammer, boom, he started fighting right-handed. Why? Because he built himself up in his weakness. And if we don't take the time to do that, and it's work. I know it's a 4-letter word that people don't want to hear, but it's work. And so there's so many layers to this that we can hit and we can talk about. I mean, only 3 of us have talked so far, and I think we've already hit on 4 or 5 different layers. So it's more layered or more complex than just one thing. And again, it's not an extreme. It's not just one thing. It's a mix of a lot. And I'm sure we're going to talk about it. And Darren, you mentioned there's a lot of luggage to unpack on this one. Brother, we got bags for days when it comes to this. And so, this is just the tip of the iceberg. I know we're going to talk about it some more, but that's my general thoughts from in the beginning.
Yeah.
Kev?
I think, Tori, you hit a great point, which is you got to know what your weaknesses are, right? I tell folks all the time, you could put a pound of weed, you could put a kilo of weed, cocaine on the table, and it don't faze me. Like, okay, whatever.
Not at all.
However, let's just be honest, with this, the barbershop, right? You put the right woman, then I've got to make sure that I control myself. Not that I just go off willy-nilly, but understand that I know my weakness. I know what my area is, right? And as a
put 4
man,
racks of ribs on the table for me, it's done. It's a wrap.
they would know.
I'm gone. I said, you put 4 racks of ribs on the table for me, it's a wrap. I'm done. I mean, I'm just saying, don't do it. Don't put it in front of me. My bad, kid.
No problem. My wife and I, we were watching the show. We were watching, I think it's like Brandon Marshall. He does like a little podcast. I don't know, the athlete or something. Okay. And one of the guys on there made the statement. I was like, I hear what you're saying, but because he was like, he's got where his wife knows that Kamala Harris is like his free pass. And I was like, okay, if that's what does it for you, cool. Not me, but okay. But understand, you have to know what and be able to be honest about it so that you know what areas you need to shore up. What areas do you need to guard against? What areas, so my wife and I, there is no one that I know that she doesn't know, really, in all honesty. And even, for example, when I went down to Tulsa to go to Bible school, I came down with 3 young ladies who were like my sister. They were, one of them I grew up from like pew babies almost. The other 2 I had known for several years before we got to Oklahoma. We all came down there to go to Bible school together. However, once my relationship started to develop with my wife, the relationship with them took a back seat. Why? Because 1, I wanted to make sure that there was nothing that could be said any way, shape, or form. So even just kind of guarding against, even if nothing's happening, being able to guard against the potential. And in our society today, can we just be honest? Because Derek, you mentioned about Billy Graham, and Billy Graham was ruthless with it. He had somebody go and look at the room and before he stepped into it, right? But we're in an age today where even if you take your armor bearer who is of the same sex as you, that's not always going to be a safe bet,
Mm.
right? So
Mm.
then it,
Yep.
it really comes to, again, like Darian talked about, accountability. And I've said this statement before: I will cover you, but I won't cover up for you. In other
That's right.
words, if something's going on, no one else needs to know, right? There's stuff I know about Darian that no one will hear from me. There's stuff I know
Mhm.
about Tori. No one will ever hear from me, right? So I
Right.
Hey,
cover,
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. I appreciate it, but
First of all,
seriously,
thank you.
but I
much
cover,
love.
but I'm not going
Yes.
to cover up, right? So
Right.
Right.
if a spouse calls and says Darian's with you, right, or Tori's with you, or Derek's with you, all right. So here's the deal,
Oh, nope. He ain't here.
and then I'm going to call you and say, hey,
Hey man, where you
just so
at?
you know, if you were trying to use me as your scapegoat, that didn't
It ain't
fly.
work.
But I'll cover you as we walk through this thing. So having people in your life that you can be that authentic person with, and I've had to use Darian at times where I've been like, look, man, this is what I gotta lay at you, right? Because we have to have that so that we don't find ourselves slipping into much worse situations, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, I look at and I look at this as a mix. It's almost like a buffet, man. I don't know. I'm going back to food again, but just hear me out. Um,
I
it's
did make
it's
pulled
it's
pork this weekend.
hey, woo, boy, stop. Anyway, so everything that we're talking about is literally like a buffet. You pick and choose not just what you want, but what you're going to need. Kevin may need a little bit more of the romaine lettuce. I may need a little bit more of this pasta salad because I can handle it. Or Darian may need a little bit of those pickled beets that are sitting over there. Or, Darian will like, nah, give it to me, y'all. I can handle it. So it really depends on what's going to work out best for us. Some accountability here, some judgment here, making sure that we're not going into places that we shouldn't go. It's a balance, and I think that's what is the juggling piece. And here's the thing: we have to include our spouses in on this. This is not a thing that we can do by ourselves. And I've been transparent, and I'll be transparent again. I have Covenant Eyes on my devices, and when Amy was still alive, guess who my other accountability partner was? Her, because I wanted to give her access at any point in time. And can I give a real life example, fellas?
Mhm.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
we in the shop, man.
Amy and I at this point, we're probably married. So that was what 2009, 2010. So that part we probably married for 15 years at that point, maybe 16. Actually 16. I'm going on 17 at that point in 2010. And so there's a former classmate of mine. We're best friends in high school, and she hit me up on Facebook, and she said, "Hey, just want to let you know I've recently given my life to Christ, and I'm starting this new journey, this walk." And we hadn't really talked in a while, and we found out she gotten a doctorate and she's working as a professor. And I said, hey, I have no problem with that at all. I said, hold on, just give me a second. We're on Facebook Messenger at that point. So I literally went to Amy. I said, hey, I said, this person has hit me up on Facebook Messenger. Similar to you, she, gave her life to Christ at a later time in life. I said, do you mind having this conversation with her instead of me having this conversation with her?
That's good.
Not because I thought that anything was going to happen,
Right.
but one, I don't want it to look like anything, and I don't want the door to be open for anything to happen to where I start having feelings or start thinking about things and start thinking somebody else other than my wife. And so Amy says, you know what? I have no problem with that whatsoever because I'm not going to be a dude talking to a female about this and bringing her through her spiritual walk, even though this person was 1,800 miles away. It really didn't matter to me at that point. I wanted to remove myself from any type of uh, evil that there may be or anything that may cause me to stumble. And guess what? she and Amy built a relationship from there. They never met each other. They talked a lot. They messaged back and forth a lot, and that's the way it should be. We were incredibly open. There's right now when I'm at Dell, I don't get into the elevator with a woman by myself. I just don't. You know what I do? I'll catch the next one. And people look at me like I'm stupid. No, I'll get the next one. That's all right. Not because I think that I'm going to do something wrong. I just, and there's other reasons before, because I'm a black man living in America.
In
But
Oklahoma, that.
You're exactly right. And so there's other reasons, but things like that. If I'm at church and Pastor Julie is in a church, I'll just wait until somebody else shows up. Why? I don't want the appearance of evil. I don't want the appearance of misdoing or wrong. That's just me. And I was raised that way. My dad is that way. But that doesn't mean that I'm fearful. For me, it's not an extreme. It'd be an extreme if I just never texted him or never talked or never emailed or stayed away. But I believe for everybody, for all of us, we've got to find that mixture that's going to work for us. The mixture that's going to work for me is not going to be the mixture that works for Kev or the one that works for Derek and the one that works for Darian. To boil it down, we have to be honest with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's another layer that we can get into. If we're not truly being honest and understanding who we are and understanding what our faults are and our weaknesses are and being true and not having too much pride and ego thinking I can handle this on my own, that's a whole nother layer. That's a whole nother topic. But to tie it off, we have to understand what pieces of that is going to be that's going to work for us because it's going to be our own personal formula.
Yeah.
Can I point out something though that has been a running theme in everybody's statement? The reality is, and the reason why accountability is so important, it has really less to do with us and more to do with who we're connected to.
We talked about it last week.
That's good.
Yep.
The reality is we submit ourselves to accountability, not to protect ourselves, but really, honestly, to protect those that we love. Because this brother's children has to deal with who knows what being said when they're wherever. The same thing with the wife. If she goes to the store, she doesn't know if they're looking at her because they know her or they think that she got on a cute top. She doesn't know. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Right. And she's now got to deal with that that questioning and that determination to I'm just gonna live. It's just when that wasn't necessary. And the reality is, a lot of times when we choose not to be open or accountable, if we choose not to do that, again, depending on the level of responsibility that we've taken on, to me, it determines the level of accountability that's necessary. But again, it's about protecting the people, more about protecting the people that you're connected to and that are connected to you, than it really is about you making sure that your stuff is okay, And the reality is, if we, let me just be, just really real, because this was an area that I definitely struggled in, and Kevin knows that. For a long time, I struggled in the areas of accountability, in the areas of selfishness. And at the end of the day, that's what I determined was really going on. I just wanted to be selfish. Get out of mine. This is me. Leave me alone. I wanted to, I had my own issues, and I really didn't care. If I was going to be honest, I really didn't care how it affected others until I saw the depth of the damage that I did.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And once I saw that, man, it was like, okay, I can't do this. I've got to let somebody know what's really going on with me. Even though I feel like what I'm dealing with, what I'm wrestling with, what I'm struggling with has nothing to do with y'all. The reality is it had everything to do with everybody that was connected to me, and I was causing great and deep pain. So, that to me is one of the biggest lessons and I'll be honest with you, one of the biggest things that I didn't hear. I heard an apology, but here I am responsible to you all to never be that guy again. What I heard was, I'm on my road. This is my journey, and I owe it to myself. I deserve. I was just like, okay. Okay, I don't know how it works that way, but okay, you know.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think if we can get men particularly out of themselves to recognize my responsibility goes a whole lot deeper. The reason why I have to be open with these areas of my life is because I need a coach. I need a coach to tie my right hand, my left hand behind my back, you know, and let me swing with this right for a little while. I need somebody to tell me, hey man, the way you handling this is sloppy. Fix this, and I'm not getting out of your face until you do.
Yeah.
It's one thing to say it and then walk. It's a whole other thing to say, no, 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 no. You're not going to get rid of me that easy. I'm here with you until you fix this. Now, what do we need
Right.
to do? Do you need some books? Do we need to get together every week? What do we need to do?
Yeah. I think also one of the things is understanding that, from what I understand, the same kind of conversations were happening a year ago that were just happening in this last one, which was dissatisfaction with his wife. Okay. For whatever, don't know all the details, but that was the thing. So then the really what happens then is that those are conversations that, instead of having it with the person who has the ability to make some changes, if there are changes that need to be made, instead you're taking it to a person who has nothing to do with it. And
Right.
now you're, instead of really trying to fix an issue, you're just widening the gap on an issue. You're just creating a bigger
Right.
issue. So I think also one of the things that we have to be not just honest with ourselves, but honest with the people around us, right? Honest, and in my, I've had to grow in this as well. Being honest about, okay, this is where I'm at right now. This is what I'm feeling. This is what's going on with me. And my wife and I have this thing now where we check in with each other. How are things going? Especially in this time of we're locked in houses almost, right? So we have these moments of, how's everything going? Are you good? Why? Because we want to make sure that everything stays the way it needs to stay and we move forward together, as opposed to moving forward in different directions.
Good stuff.
So,
Yeah.
I think the really just I want to kind of talk about, because now the person I'm really concerned for is the wife. I'm really concerned for her in this, because, and here's I think Tori, you put it in the chat. This is day 3 baggage right here, because we got like 5 days of baggage to unpack.
Yeah,
This,
this is a 4 bag vacation right here,
listen,
brother. Yes, it is.
I think we just now getting into the funky underwear, right? Uh,
Oh, as Creflo Dollar said back in the day, the spirit of the P Funk.
hey,
You remember that?
but I
Yeah.
think also there's a segment of this also that I think is, um, I think it's black church as well, of how we handle pastors' wives, how we handle these type of situations that happen in the church. I was one of our former partners. I saw where she was basically saying that she was part of a church and she saw the pastor and had a whole woman on the front row who was not his wife, right? So seeing that happen from her perspective is, now we're watching this happen again. This is an issue that the church is not willing to address. So how can we as the church make sure that we cover both? Because I think there's been a rush to cover him and a rush to help him, but I'm concerned about her. I'm concerned about what's
Do
going
we
on with her.
know that there's not a rush to help cover her?
I think the focus. I say that from the aspect that the focus is on him.
Him.
The focus is on him. There's very little
Okay.
mention of her, except, well, I wouldn't have been that, or what's some other things I'm hearing, or, well, she couldn't figure that out. So it's more now, I'm gonna cover him, or I'm at least be concerned about what's happening with him, but she should have known better. So we now have made her, in many respects, in some respects, not many, but in some respects, I think that she has become almost the punching bag for this, or the undercurrent cause, if you will, if that makes sense.
Okay. So I'm I first of all, I'll say this. I get what you're saying, 100%. I understand your thought process and where you're coming from, but I don't know if this is just my mom and Mary Watkins coming out of me. I could care less what the internet says or the people that just want to spread gossip want to say. Those are not the people that I'm concerned about. And though, if we're going to be honest, those are not the people that are going to pray for her. Those are not the people that are going to be in her corner. There's a whole lot of people that don't like who I am and don't like what I do. But that's because they don't know me. They don't understand me. And they're not in my inner circle. And they're not the people that I'm in the trenches with. So I think that was the main reason for my question. Do we know that that's not happening? Or are we just looking at the comments on the forums, or are we just looking at comments from Facebook or Twitter or Instagram and what the masses are saying and the things that they're just throwing out, which terrible, and we shouldn't do that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that she doesn't have the ones around her guarding her and shielding her from that and trying to lift her arms and trying to be there for her. I don't want to make that assumption that it's not happening just because I don't see it.
I'm not
just because,
and I get that.
I'm not saying you are.
No, I get that, but I think where I came from it was from the aspect that this isn't the first time that something like this has happened, and this is not the first time I've seen, whether it be internet, whether it be forums, whether it be Facebook, or just what's been happening in a church. So I think that I'm coming from the aspect of I don't know specifically her situation as far as her who's covering her, who's she's got around her, her circle. I don't know that. I don't know that any of us will ever know that. However, I think that if we're going to even help people that may be watching who have gone through or have witnessed, I think that not everyone's going to have a circle. If she has a circle, I don't think everyone's going to have a circle. Especially if we're honest, sometimes in the black church, they're not going to have a circle come around the first lady. They're not going to have a circle come around the deaconess's wife. The circle is going to be around him to restore him, and she's going to be left in the cold, trying to pick up the pieces and trying to maneuver and make it through.
Right. Typically, for whatever reason, this stuff turns into a us versus them. It's and you're right. They either circle around, because I've seen on both sides. They either circle around the wife, trying to help her get away from him if he's falling short, or they circle around him thinking that they're circling around the family.
Right.
And the reality is they're just circling around, their man. And then you wind up hearing the backlash. Well, like you said, well, she should have known better. Obviously she ain't taking care of business, and all these comments that are inappropriate at best and inaccurate at most. So it's just. But we do that whenever there's a problem. And I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of dealing with that myself. Whenever there's a problem, it becomes a okay, we've got to create an enemy out of this.
Right.
When that's not even necessary, it's not appropriate. It doesn't help anybody. If you were supporting us,
support us
when we looked whole, support us while we're broken. I don't understand why there's a difference. Because to me, maturity says that I know the dividing line. You two are individuals. I understand that. But I ain't got to choose one and reject the other in order to support you both.
Right. Sure.
Derek, quiet, man. Come on.
Hey, it's a lot to ponder, man.
It is. It's just so deep, man. I mean, you look at I always like to compare sin. I like to compare the infraction, right? It's like if we're gonna look at one, let's look at all of them and see how we address them, right? It's like if we're gonna look at stealing, let's look at homosexuality, let's look at all of them. I hate to even throw those things out, but because I know that everybody's dealing with something and nobody wants their sin to be the topic of Sunday morning, right? Because it's easy when you're talking about somebody else's sin. It's like, yeah, that's bad. But when it comes around to your table, it is like, well, wait a minute, I got issues. I got
Mercy, mercy, grace.
Right,
and
right,
I think,
right.
I
Forgiveness,
think
understanding, patience.
exactly.
There you go, Kev.
And so I think if we look at like a thief, then we could probably circle back to maybe they had a background where they had to steal, or maybe they were stealing because they were hungry, or maybe they were, when we look at how we interact with food, it's like, I mean, we grew up with poor eating habits, and it was because we were poor, and everything that we had was high sugar, high salt, and so it just became a habit. We can look at those things, but I think the lineage is very short when we talk about this sexual or this relational immorality. It's a very short leash, and we don't want to go back. We don't want to talk about how we've hypersexualized our women. We don't want to talk about how we are not taught to have a very platonic relationship that's co-ed. Like
Right.
when you grow up as a kid, like a girl is an object. She is something to be conquered or adored, or what I'm saying. She's a quest,
Mm-hmm.
and she's not
Mm-hmm.
an equal. She's not. You know what I'm saying? We don't want to go back to all of those conditioning things. We stop at you shouldn't have did it. We
Woo.
want to stop
Oh
at
man.
what I'm saying. We don't want to take it all the way back. And so I just I sit and I see this stuff, man, and I'm like, man, I just wish that we didn't have this hierarchy of sin. I wish that we went straight to the root and the cause of everything, and then we walked it out the same way,
Yeah.
right? In the same way that I deal with stealing and poor eating habits, I deal with lust and dishonesty. Like, I think we have a recipe, we have an equation of tracing it back, admitting your fault, right, one to another, asking for repentance and forgiveness, moving towards sanctification and being made new. Like, I think we have the process in place, but we're just so quick. We're so quick for judgment. We're so quick for justice. We're so quick for these things that we don't take the time to really consider that we're dealing with people who are multi-layered, multifaceted, that are these complex human beings that I believe are literally just trying to do the best, make it to the next day. They trip, they fall, they get up, they trip, they fall, they get up. And while my area isn't your area,
Right.
can we extend the grace that you want received when you make a mistake?
Yeah.
And again, I'm not trying to like cover over one and highlight the other. That's not what I'm trying to do.
Right.
Right.
The thing is that we don't treat it all the same, right? And the deacon that's stealing out of the pot, he not getting the pub as the preacher that's sleeping with. You know what I'm saying? It's just we just have this process, and I just wish we would do a better job because people and souls are at stake.
Come
Good
on.
stuff,
Yeah, I
man.
think I
Come
think the
on.
thing that you just hit on, Derek, was that there's a human element that we fail to realize and we fail to think about. And we're so quick, and you just said it now. We're so quick to judge, have justice, call it out, that we're not looking at that human aspect that is going to help people truly come into restoration.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is something that is lacking significantly because I've seen things happen in the church for so long where somebody does something, boom, they get kicked out or they don't go anymore, and you don't hear them anymore. Okay, you told them that they were wrong, but what happened to restoration?
Mm-hmm.
What happened, just like you said there, what happened to go and say, hey, I had an issue in this area too. This is how we get over it. This is how we make sure you don't do this anymore. You think for those of us that have kids, we do the same exact thing with our kids, but how can we forget it when we're adults and we're doing things that we shouldn't be doing?
Right.
Because if my kid keeps running through the house and she keeps busting her head on the side of the wall, and I just yell at her and scream at her and tell her, don't do that, don't do that, and then I put her in timeout, and if I don't instruct her, hey, if you don't run through the house, because if you run through the house, this is what's going to happen. You're going to have a concussion, and then later on down the road, these are going to be the symptoms and the issues that you're going to run into, and you're not going to be the best person that you can be later on down the road.
Yeah.
That's correction. That's restoration. How do we keep you from doing this, and what parameters can we put in place to make sure that this doesn't happen again? Why? Because I'm here with you on this journey to make sure you don't do this again.
Yes.
We don't see enough of that. And again, I'll say it. I'll be transparent. I could not have gotten over dealing with pornography on my own unless I had somebody with me that said, "Hey, look, have you dealt with this? All right. How did you get over it?" It didn't come from Amy. It didn't come from. I had to get with somebody and to figure out how to get it right and to fix it. And then what did I do? Just like you said, Derek, what did I do in turn? I helped other guys do the exact same thing. Why? Because I knew the pitfalls, I knew the triggers, I knew the traps. I knew how to get yourself to that level of restoration to be able to not do it anymore. I could easily say, "Bro, you wrong, man. You know you shouldn't be doing that." Well, how do I stop? I don't know. I just know you need to stop doing it. And the thing that I hated the most is, did you pray about it? Of course I prayed about it. Okay. Well, did you read your word? Of course I read my word, man. What do you think I've been doing the whole time? I need practical steps.
Right.
Unfortunately, and I've seen it so many, and I feel like I'm on a soapbox, and I'm sorry, but so many times we're not getting instruction. We're just told what we've done wrong, and we're told to fix it, but we're not given the instructions on how to fix it. You give me a math problem, and I don't know how to do the FOIL method, first, outside, inside, last, in algebra. If I don't know how to do it correctly, and you just say, "Well, just do it over again and make sure you get it right this time." If I don't know the method, I'm not going to be successful. This is no different. I'm not saying that's what happened in John Gray's case, but I can say it happened in hundreds of thousands of people within the church, whether it's a black church, whether it's a white church, Hispanic, Asian, I don't care. It's happening because we really don't deal truly with restoration in church. We deal about calling people out, tell them they shouldn't do it, but we don't help them fix it. Why do you think AA is so popular? Why? Because accountability. Know your weaknesses. We give you a structure. We lay it out. We got a 12-step program. We're going to give you chips along the way. 1 month.
Shoot, one day.
Hey, exactly.
Oh, literally, one day. Hey.
Yeah. Somebody you may be helping with pornography. You haven't looked at it for 1 week? Hats off to you, bro. I give it to you. And go with them along that way in that journey. Unfortunately, we haven't done that enough. Sorry.
Go ahead, D, because I
was just gonna say, a part of that issue, and I do feel like there are segments of the world that do it better, simply than the church, simply because of the way we do or don't do relationships in the church. We have where we have our biggest challenge is the fact that relationships are very difficult to form when you're only dealing with a person 2 hours a week.
Come on.
Right.
And then on top of that, there's this forced interaction. Look at your neighbor. Hug, find 5 people and hug them, tell them to high five them and tell them that they're great as you sit down to listen to this one person speak for the next hour,
Right.
And if we'll be absolutely honest, that's just not the natural way to form relationships. Our best relationships come on daily interaction for hours at a time. We've built all of our friendships, all of our closest friendships were out of friends who we spent time with and got to know. They got to know us. We probably had a fight, probably didn't like each other after a while. Borrowed stuff, stole stuff, broke stuff. I mean, just we interacted and so the church, the way it's structured right now, again, is all forced interaction. It's not natural. It's just not natural on how we form relationships. And until we find better ways of accommodating that, I think we're always going to have this struggle of, hey, don't do that anymore. Catch up with you next week.
Yep.
And go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna say, and then you've got this guy who's sitting in, he's sitting in his apartment or in his bedroom, ready to cry, not knowing what to do, don't know who to call, just feel like he's about to go crazy because he has no connection. But everything that we tell him not to do or where not to go, He's like, man, I can't call you.
Oh,
You're gonna be like, hey, come
You'll
on,
judge
here,
me,
I
yeah.
got you.
yeah. So what you're saying, Darian, is I think it's two things. One, we need to do life together. We don't do life alone, and we've heard that phrase I don't know how many times. But the other thing is this. I mean, I heard it all the time, and it happened when I was growing up, and it probably happened to some of you all because you're just as old as I am. And communities.
I'm younger
Now
than
you dare
I'm younger than you.
not by much.
Enough.
But we all know that in my community, a community helped raise a child. Pretty much, uh, Miss Watkins, yeah. Tari was cutting up, and I had to spank him, but I'm sending him home. All right, you know what? I'm gonna get him when he get home too. What in the world? What? Riding my bike. Hey, mama. Hey, come here. What happened over at Tony's house, ma'am? Yeah, Tony's mom called me. God dang it, man, for real? And guess what? The community kept you in line.
Mm-hmm.
The same goes with our church. I can't, okay, I can't speak into Derek's life if I don't have a relationship
Right.
with him.
Right.
I can't, I can't say to someone, hey man, how your eyes looking? You've been wandering?
Right.
I can't do that if I don't have a relationship with you. Prime example, I went to lunch with one of my friends, go to church, it was about 2 years ago, and we talked about stuff like this all the time. And since we had a relationship and we met for lunch and we talked quite often, we texted, I looked at him and I said, how your eyes doing, bro? And he says, you know what? And we had a talk. I couldn't do that if it was one of those turn around, look at your neighbor, give him a high five, and I only see him once a week, and I only see him for 45 minutes, and maybe interact for 3 minutes on a Sunday because I don't do life with him. My question is this, and that was a long statement to ask this question. We grew. I know I did it all the time. We grew up this way. Our churches used to be that way. So why are we not taking what we've grown up with and what we've learned and apply it to this? Is it pride? Are we being haughty? Or are we just, you know what? This is what I like to do. God will forgive me. And I'll keep doing it until I get caught. And I'll say, I'm sorry. But, I'll go back to it again. But God's going to forgive me. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to be accountable. Why are we not doing things that we know that work because we grew up with them? That's my true and real question. We know what to do, but why don't we do it? And I'm not saying as an individual, I'm talking even as a church.
Yeah. I think there's a couple things in there because I don't know that we've ever been fully where there's the relationship and I help bring about change without there still being condemnation. I think the one of the things that, and I'll talk about my church experience was we're gonna be our youth group. We're gonna be in a relationship. We're gonna go bowling. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do that. And then I don't understand why your age group wants to sleep around. Okay, well,
right.
because well, y'all need to don't do that. So I don't think we've ever done that.
Yeah.
I think that Derek, you hit on something. I think that the church has got to realize, and one of the reasons I preached a series called Grace Over Everything because I wanted our church to understand that there is nothing that the grace of God cannot cover, right? And I think that we have to understand that there's levels to this. There is salvation and justification, but we're walking out sanctification.
Mm-hmm.
And so the fact is that we're all on a race, right? But I'm not racing against you. So the fact that you're still stumbling at 100 meters doesn't mean that I get to point the finger back at you because I'm at 400 meters and say, look at you, why are you messing up? If nothing else, my goal is to help you get to where I am. And that's why I appreciate what we had in Oklahoma with Greenwood, which is now Transformation, because discipleship was a huge part of what helped all of us, really. When you had a table that you could sit at and you had 12 men that were there with you, walking through life,
Right.
and you knew their issues, they knew your issues,
They knew you were.
and you all walked through this thing together, right? So I think that, and if we're honest, that model comes from Christ. Christ
Mm-hmm.
had
It
12
does.
men
Jesus.
that
Yep.
they knew Judas was a thief.
That he lived with, though.
Yeah.
That he lived with. You know,
Right.
a lot of times people don't go, and I didn't mean to cut.
No, you
Forgive
good.
me for cutting you off, but that's a key point. He lived with them.
Yes.
They lived with him. They didn't just
Yes.
watch him preach.
Right.
No.
They didn't
With
just
him.
watch
They
him
did
send
life with him.
sermon preparation. They literally did life.
Yes.
Go get us something to eat. Go
Right.
deal with this. Go deal with that. Come report back to me. Okay, I'm sending you over here. Handle this. Handle that. Watch me. Get behind me. You talking crazy.
Mhm.
You know, just they did life together.
They did life.
Yeah.
Yeah. They knew that John snored probably. You got Peter over there farting in his sleep. They did everything together.
All of that. All of that.
But that's how they had that relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
But you know what? Let me back up to something that Kevin said. You know, when you talked about we're going through the process of salvation and justification, and then sanctification, all of that. It hit me immediately. Yeah, but I have to be the face of that to the person that's walking through it.
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
The challenge to me is the fact that people don't want to be the face of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because the reality is if you identify me, and I remember teaching on this once, if you identify with someone that's publicly going through something like you know, their issue is a public issue now.
Mm-hmm.
I can't afford to be seen with you because I'm going to be identified as having that same issue. And the reality is, but that's one of the reasons why people all of a sudden they get alienated trying to go through this
Right.
process on their own. And at some point, we've got to be able to say, you know what, your value is much higher than my embarrassment.
Yes. Yes.
Your value, your life is so much more valuable than a moment of somebody looking at us like, ooh. Because literally that same person that oohs you next month is going to be on to somebody else.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let
Well,
me
Darren,
say this
that's
real quick.
been
Let me say this
honestly-
also real quick, Tori.
Go ahead.
One of the things
Go ahead.
also,
Go
and
ahead.
I think to a situation that I had, is that if you are the face of it, of being that person for them, also recognizing if it's beyond your scope.
That's true.
Because there was a couple where, and he cheated, and his friends that he was connected with tried to help walk it through, and they were like, no, this is too much for us. So then they were like, you need to call Pastor Kevin. So understanding and recognizing that maybe you don't have to be the face for everyone, but when you are
Right.
the face, be the face. When you are that discipler, be that discipler. But also recognizing, being honest with yourself, being honest with everyone around you. When you know that, okay, I'm not too far removed from this, so I can't help you out of your pornography issue if I still just looked at Pornhub last week. I'm at a week difference. You're at 3 days difference. So I may not be the best person to help walk you out of this. But yes, I'm going to walk with you, but I can't walk you out.
We'll cheer at the milestone.
Right.
You a week, me too. All right.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, you got to know your limitations.
Yeah.
For sure. The thing that comes to mind for me is, and Darren, you just mentioned on it not too long ago, was what you said, Darren, about, you know, shunning or, you know, people, ooh, we look at that. Unfortunately, that's been the status quo for decades. That this is what you do. What you're supposed to do is somebody messed up, somebody sinned, they fell, whatever. You know what? Get as far away from them as you can, like they have leprosy. Unfortunately, that's been the status quo for a lot of churches. And that's not the way we should do it. The way it should be is, all right, let's circle the wagon. Let's cover you. Let's figure out how to get out of this. And then now let's figure out how we stay out of this.
Yeah.
And Ashley said it before, there was a time in her life when things that she did, things that happened, and she really thought, because of what we'd experienced at other churches of her growing up, not us personally, but what she had seen,
Mm-hmm.
she really thought that people were going to turn their back on
Yep.
her, not going to talk to her, and judge her. But when the opposite happened, she was like, "Yo, Dad, these are the people that even when I was going sideways, they're still here for me now,
Mm-hmm.
and they never left. I'm the one that pushed them away because I thought they were going to push me
Yep.
away. So she's like, let me push them away first before they push me away. And the exact opposite happened.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, that's not the norm. We have to get to that point to where we have, and I say it again, it's the human element. Because guess what? I've messed up just as much as someone else has. But the problem that we have is, I think Derek has already talked about it, is that we measure sins. We stack rank sins. We have a drafting order of sins. What sin is in Which sin is in second place? Which sin is in the bottom, 20 to 25? But when it boils down to it, a sin is a sin. It doesn't matter. Well, I didn't do that. Yeah, I may have stole a pencil from the office, but you know what? I didn't go snort coke with a deacon's wife and get her pregnant. It doesn't matter. I mean, that was a really wild
That
scenario.
was
I don't know what.
It was pretty wide. It was pretty wide.
Yeah.
That was,
that escalated quickly.
Yeah.
but yeah, dude. But that is not from personal experience. I'm just letting you know.
What church you go to again, Tori?
Right.
But you get what I'm saying. It's unfortunately we've allowed that to just be the status quo. You know what? I'm done, man. I can't say no more.
Keep going, keep
No,
going.
I'm good.
Keep going.
I've already lost. I lost the room. Go ahead, kid. Go ahead, Dad. Go
I'll
ahead.
tell you right there your church address. Which day your pastor's name was? Y'all still got this? Yeah. But it's true, man. People stack them, brother.
Yeah.
They
and
do.
it's a personal pecking order.
It is. It changes from
Yeah.
person to person.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's literally a personal pecking order. You know, but the crazy thing is, we never want to get caught up in the popular vote either. So even if I don't have a problem, even if I don't have a deep problem with something, once that issue becomes public, I gotta at least act like I got a little disdain, even though it ain't that bad to me.
Mm-hmm.
I know, right? I
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
For
Right.
real?
Yeah.
Yeah. We gotta go there,
That's a
even though the
whole
reality
nother
is, we're like,
conversation.
you know what? I mean, shit,
Yeah.
that's what we want to say. Like, it ain't that deep. But the truth of the matter is, all of y'all think it's that bad? Yeah, it's that bad then, because the reality is we all have our own personal pecking order when it comes to what's a bad sin versus what's not,
And we shouldn't.
Yeah. I mean, because the same thing. I mean, we know this, that when we start to put things in order, it really, and I'm this is the pastoral part of me coming out. It really minimizes the grace of God to say that the grace, yeah, grace is there for the pencil stealing, but the sleeping with the deacon's wife and snorting cocaine, I don't know if there's enough grace for that, right?
I don't even want to know how that got pulled off.
God is only so great, right? You can't handle that one.
But we've
World.
got to get to the point where we recognize, and this was kind of like the logical progression in some respects of this conversation, was that even though we know that John has admitted that he's messed up, the fact is that his life is not over.
Right.
His ministry does need to, I believe, needs to take a seat for a moment. That's just my opinion, but that's for his covering to figure it out. And then he needs to, he can still move forward. I think we have to recognize and understand that the object is, let's identify what the issue is, and let's figure out the game plan to move forward out of the issue, and to set up boundaries so that the issue does not have the opportunity to happen and manifest again. I think that's the other thing, is setting up those boundaries, setting up those guardrails.
Yes.
Accountability is
Yes.
a big piece of it, but also communication. Also, look, my wife has we have the same, everybody uses the same password or passcode in my household. So if my wife ever wants to get into any of my stuff,
Free reign.
she knows the passwords. So it's not as if I've got a burner phone, right?
You better not.
I trust. Listen, I ain't making enough money to have a burner phone. Let's just be honest. Verizon ain't giving them away for free, so
So they ain't.
Boy.
But here's the thing: we have to be able to do so. But there's many guys that I've known that I ain't giving my wife my password to my phone. I said, "What are you trying to hide? Why not? That's my phone, bro. You married, right? It's all together as one."
yeah.
I feel the same way about phones, iPads, computers, checking accounts, savings accounts. That's just me personally. Hey, you're in this together, and you have to be man enough to say, you know what? My life is an open book. My wife, at any point in time, can actually pick up my phone and go do the code and find out who I've been texting, who I've been calling, and what I've been looking at.
Yeah.
But I have to be able to allow her to do that. And there's a whole lot of pride a lot of times that doesn't allow that to happen. And we have to speak to that.
Yeah.
And it's not about being whipped. It's not about being controlled. It's not about being, well, you can't be your own man. Hey, I am being my own man, but being the man I'm supposed to be for my wife, for my family, for my kids. My kid. Sorry, I don't have any illegitimate ones out
About
there.
to
Just
say,
let you know.
Tori.
It's all coming out tonight.
I can say kids because I got grandkids. So kids, plural. Wow, that digressed quickly. But you know what I mean. It's we have to be willing to be able to do that and take the chip off of our shoulder and thinking that we're lesser of a man by doing so.
Yeah.
You're stronger for doing so. And what a great example that's going to set for your kids. And I think about that now. What example is that setting for my daughter, for the man that she marries, and what she expects from him? When she knew that her mom at any point in time could go to her dad's computer or tablet or cell phone and see what's going on, and him not hide anything. That's what she grew up with. So now she expects that. And if she doesn't get that, then there's a red flag. And that is a whole nother set of things that we can talk about. And I think either Darian or Derek talked about it early on, not just the wife, but how it's affecting the kids.
Mm-hmm.
That is a whole nother bag that hasn't even pulled up the trunk yet. That's a whole nother thing that we have to deal with, because now, are these the examples that they're going to follow, or these are the examples they're going to go, I don't want to do this when I get older?
Right.
All right, guys, we're at the hour mark. Give you guys opportunity.
That
was quick. It was deep, though. Any last comments? Anything before we wrap it up? On Chop
Yes,
Up.
I got one.
I've never slept with a deaconess wife, snorts cocaine, or got her pregnant. I'm just saying. That's not a real life story. It's not a real life example. It was a hypothetical.
It was like, it was me.
I'm just saying.
I got one. When I say this, I don't want to remove any of the responsibility on the participating parties. I don't want to do that.
Right.
But I think we have to also be careful as a body of faith, as a church. We have to be aware of what we do to these men and women of God when we put them on these pedestals. That's a lot of pressure. That's a lot of attention. They have to be so strong and so rooted and so humble. They have to fight and claw for humility and to stay grounded, because the more they reach for those roots, the more we push them up and we elevate them. And I think it's very difficult. I heard somebody say it was to the essentially the gist of not being ready for the position, right? If I'm not ready for the elevation, that anything that I have when I get there will be manifested. It will be exposed. And so if I'm dealing with lust on a lower level, when I get to that higher level, it's going to be exposed. And again, I'm not taking any fault or responsibility away from those guys, but I know that especially in the Black community, we elevate our superstars and our preachers and our singers and our musicians. We
Yes.
put them up, and then
Yes.
when they show us how human they are, we grab them by the feet and we smash them to the ground. And
Yep.
so I think that we have to do a really good job of honoring the gift and acknowledging its impact on our lives,
Yeah.
our individual lives, but also remembering that they're human and watching those pedestals, man, that we put them on. Because um, anybody that I can think that got blood flowing through their veins has the potential to sin just as great as I do.
Yep.
And I think
Yeah.
that's very important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff. I guess the last thing that I would say, um, piggybacking off of what Derek said, there's one man that I can think of that to me has shown an example of what it takes to remain at a high level of influence, but as you mentioned, fight and claw for that humility, and that is Apostle Matthew Stevenson. He and the only reason why I bring him up is because I've watched this guy over the years do stuff and say stuff that preachers just don't do and say. Like he's like, look, I I got preacher friends and I got friends. I call my friends.
When
I go hang with my
when I
friends.
need to cuss somebody out too.
I my
I,
friends.
listen, I'm telling you what my leader has said.
Seriously,
Mm-hmm.
he has presented this. He has such a wide platform, and it's continuing to grow. And I believe one of the reasons why the momentum just is not slowing down. Again, anybody can get caught up at
Mm-hmm.
any point. Our flesh can trip us up if we let it. But one of the things that has impressed me about him is that he just remains practical with his relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And he has said this: just because you connected to me in this season doesn't automatically mean you going with me in the next.
Mm-hmm.
If
That's right.
if you're dead weight, and this is me paraphrasing, if you're dead weight in the next season, we're just not going together, But at the same time, he understands I need people who I can be Matthew with, not
Mm-hmm.
not just apostle, not just leader, not boss,
Mhm.
not
Mm-hmm.
dad,
Mm-hmm.
Matthew. I need folks that don't expect scripture out of every other statement. Every principle of growth and built church building and
Right.
no man. Let's
Right.
talk about the game. Let's talk about let's just
Mhm.
can I just be a man for a minute?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And a lot of bringing it full circle, a lot of us as men, doesn't matter what level of platform we have, if we have any at all, the older we get, the more we struggle with man to man relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Straight up, just real.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I pray that we can do better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, Darren. You kind of stole my thunder, but I'm okay with that because it needs to be said. It needs to be said again. I need people to know Tari, not Tari, the Dell worker, not Tari, the praise and worship leader, not Tari, the men's group leader. I need people that know Tari, and I know them because I've said to so many people, you know what? If you need, hey, call me, scream, vent. I don't care. Yell at the moon. It doesn't really matter to me because that. And I said it before. It's that human element.
Right.
We forget so much that we're people, we're human, and we have to understand that there's this stuff that we go through. We bleed the same way, we hurt the same way, we cut the same way. We're not the people that we always see either on a Sunday or a Wednesday or whenever, men's breakfast. I need people that I can be me around. Yeah. And here's the thing. We have to make sure, we talked about it last week or week before last, we've got to make sure we select the right people for those people.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily, it doesn't have to be someone that goes to church. I mean, you got to have somebody there that's going to be to understand, hey, this is Tari. This is why. Yeah. This is if it's Kev, it's the same Kev, the preacher of empowerment, said this is bruh.
Yeah.
It's It's not Kevin Crawley. This is Kev.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And so I need those people in my life I've called those people. I said, hey, I need you to come over now because I'm about to lose my grits.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need you to pray for me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need you to pray with me. And
Mm-hmm.
don't bring the Bible because I don't need that right now. I know the scripture. I need somebody right here because I'm about to lose my grits on somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And if I do, I'm going to go to jail. That's just, I'm being as real and as candid as I can be.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't have that set up because we're so caught in our pride, we have a title or a stature that we have to try to hold up and to keep up, or an image, and it's about the whole pedestal thing and raising up people higher than what they should be. When we don't remember that we are people, we're human. We're gonna mess up. We're gonna stumble. We can fall. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
you get what?
So yeah, I get what you're saying.
We have to be able to do that. Yeah.
I think, and so in closing, I think that I think this has been good to have the conversation because at the end of the day, again, I did not want this to be let's dish the tea on John Gray and going on there.
Not at all.
That's not at
Right.
all what this is about. What this was what can we take away? What are the lessons that we can learn and apply? I think that's the key thing also is apply. What are the things, I think anybody that's been watching, that's been the goal of this is what are the lessons that we see and how can we apply them? All right. So that's been another episode of Chop It Up here every Tuesday evening, 5:30 Arizona time, 7:30 Central, and then everywhere else you figure out it's also on YouTube as well. But we have this, cleanse yourself. Let's get woosah, right? And I told y'all, again, in the words of Earl, y'all gonna make me lose my mind up in here.
Up in here.
Look, appreciate y'all. Have a great time.
Take care.
We will see you next Tuesday.
There are 2 syllables on here. It's here.